So today we're going to be doing a hands-on webinar demonstrating how to set up and run AI models on your own hardware with no cloud services, no data leaving your control. So we're going to watch a live installation and see how accessible this technology actually is, how to run it on a standard computer and requires no specialized technical background to get you started. So I think this is a really important example of if you want to explore AI capabilities personally and propose solutions for your organization or understand what's possible within your own infrastructure, we're going to really be able to learn with this practical knowledge today. Again, this is part of our continued effort to prioritize and provide Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous data governance tools and insights that we here in the U.S. Indigenous Data Sovereignty Network root our practices in servicing for tribes and nations in what's currently called today the U.S. territories, the United States and territories. So today we have the honor of being joined by Zam DeShield, who is a member of the Chickasaw Nation. And they previously served on the planning as a planning director for both the Samish Indian Nation and the Squamish Indian tribal community, where they really developed their expertise in tribal governance and policy frameworks. Today, as a contractor, they established Microsoft's Indigenous Program Office, working with Indigenous communities globally to develop AI machine translation tools and replicable processes for low resource languages, and coordinating cross-company efforts on Indigenous language integration and products. So Zam will tell you more about their many qualifications, but I want to welcome Zam to Shields. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. So I am no longer with Microsoft. I am a grad student working in a completely different field, and I do this on the side as a consultant and just trying to help spread as much knowledge as I can on safer choices with AI, aiming for data privacy, and just safety. There's a lot of things right now that are at risk for everybody, and I think that those are real concerns that we can do real things to address. So I'm going to do my best to walk you through this, and just know that there's a lot of different ways that you can set up local AI to use for yourself. You can do it just on your phone if you'd like. You can do it on your computer. And there's ways to set it up for enterprise settings as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. We're gonna start this. It's been a minute since I've done my own sharing, so hope you can roll with me on this. Okay. So AI on your terms. There are so many things that are happening and changing on a day-to-day basis right now that it can be a lot to keep up with. Um, One thing that has been shown from the outset of AI being used in public and online settings is that uh, control is the big question. How secure is your data? What are companies choosing to do with it? Here in the United States, we are dealing with a pretty dramatic situation of our data as citizens of this particular country being taken from us and used without consent. For people globally, I think it's a concern that's likely real for pretty much any colonial government out there. And so for tribal citizens and for tribal governments. I think it's a good thing to be thinking about what's happening with your data and how do you use a tool that can be very powerful and beneficial for our communities without risking all of the things that we hold dear. One of the things that I've been thinking about since the last webinar I gave with this group is data is a cultural resource, which is the term that's used in the US to talk about the resources that are part of our culture in Indian country. It's language, it's artifacts, like the physical things that we deal with, buildings, lands, our relatives. And the same goes for this stuff that is just digital, is that it is a representation of those things. And so it is important. And in many cases sacred. So thinking about how to actually leverage some of these major tools, not opt out of them, but use them for our benefit. There are some ways that you can set it up safer, and one of those is to download models and use them locally, either again on your literal phone or on your computer. So with Cloud AI, just going onto ChatGPT, your app, or on your web browser, your query is traveling to servers that you don't control. Your data can be stored, analyzed, used for training. There were initially some promises around a few of these models that your data wouldn't be taken and used for training other models, or that privacy maybe was at the forefront. I think that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what country the model is being hosted from. It's a good thing to keep in mind that you are not in control of that when you're using a public model. Your data can be used for training these models. There's been instances of people using public models and putting private data in there, and that data kind of popping out on other people's queries, just kind of at random. So it really is all over the place. And there aren't good ways to control for this and make it truly like a completely safe experience when you're connected to the internet. So the cloud AI stuff requires internet and also their continued access to you. Um, Contrasting that, local AI runs entirely on your hardware. The data never leaves your machine and it works fully offline. At least it can. The other piece is that you can choose to have it be community governed, and the sovereignty can be built into the design that you set up on your computer. There's also AI models popping up that are built on a completely different basis of data than some of these major models that we have used and maybe got accustomed to interacting with. There's been some examples out of New Zealand, and there's people who are just setting these things up on their own or retraining them to be in a different typical hierarchy than the models are trained on these major scales. So there's a lot of choice out there as far as what your local AI could look like. So for today, we're going to keep it really simple. The demo stack is basically Olama, which is a program that you can download from olama.com, I think. I've put in the link there, and hopefully someone can grab that from the show notes today. And then Open Web UI. Basically, that's like your private interface, your like skin or screen so that you can chat with your AI. It doesn't require cloud once you've downloaded the initial thing, and you don't need to have an account. And then using RAG, like a specific set of documents that you're going to have whatever model you download and query it against those documents. And for today, I've taken a large chunk of NCAI resolutions off of their website and made that into a data set that can be queried specifically. So I'm going to stop share real quick and then get this slideshow pulled down. And then we're going to show you guys my screen here. Okay. I'm going to move all of you off to the side so that you don't just look at it yourselves.
It's always fun on Zoom when you can move the whole audience to a different screen.
I'm doing that right now.
No worries. And then just to check in, Zam, I did add the Olama website to the chat there.
Thank you.
So if there's any other links you want me to drop in the chat as we go, I can pull it from the Runner Show document too.
Okay. Good. All right. So this can be a little intimidating looking, and I will tell you this, that the notes that will be sent out after this whole demonstration, there's some like very, very simple options for how to use local AI. Again, including just literally downloading an app onto your phone and choosing to use that over ChatGPT or Claude or whoever else. And there's also some options for doing a very simple, like one-step download. What I'm going to show you is a little bit more complicated, but it is just so that you can see what it looks like when you take a local AI model, download it, and you're not just doing a back and forth chat, but you're actually able to upload like a full data set and use AI to work through that data set. So what you're seeing on my screen right now, I have Activity Monitor open um, just to show you Olama. Olama is this little icon down here. If you go and download Olama off the internet, you can use this as, again, a very simplistic, clean looking, nice looking interface for a ChatGPT type experience. And so we'll go on to just search Olama. The link was provided to you, but here it is. It's a pretty simple thing. You don't have to pay for anything to use Olama. There's a few different ways, as I said, to get these models downloaded for you off of the internet. But Olama is very simple, and you don't have to do the like multiple steps that I'm going to do. You could just use this. And there's also another version called Jan AI, and there's also LM Studio. There's probably hundreds of options out there, but Olama is simple and it's very privacy forward, and that's the reason that I selected it today. So you can download it for whatever computer you're working off of. If you're on a Mac, there's a Mac version, and there's also Linux and Windows. Just depends on what your machine is running off of. So very simple to download Olama here. And then if you're opening up and you just want to do a real basic chat of with Olama, then you can use this interface right here. You can say, "Hey, tell me uh, what the population of LA is right now." We'll see what it turns back. Okay, so it's using some dated references, again, not connected to the internet. So you're going to get basically what is the latest information that this model had at the time that it was downloaded. You can see right here, once you have Olama on your machine, there are tons of models that you can choose to download. And in the notes that'll be sent out after this, there's a few links that you'll get. And one of them is for this website that kind of breaks down what the benefits and drawbacks of these different models are. So there's a number of different models here. Again, using ones that are not based in the US or are outside of the Five Eyes. This is like a term that's used for these company or these countries that like openly disregard privacy issues. But Mistral is a fine one to use. Gwen is another one that's not too bad. And DeepSeek is based out of China. I think a lot of us have heard things like, oh my gosh, like China's going to steal all your stuff. I'm telling you this, if it's a US-based company, they're doing more to steal your information than any Chinese-based company out there. So there's all these different models, and all you have to do is click right here and it'll download the next model for you if you wanted to download and use that on your machine. They're all different sizes, so you do have to have enough space on your machine to download the model and then enough RAM to actually run it. But there's a number of different models that are pretty small and can be run on things as small as like an 8 gigs of RAM. So I just purchased a new laptop this last week so I could run a few different models, but I was running Mistral on my 8 gig of RAM laptop last week. And I was able to download one additional model before I really started crashing my computer. So you can have something that's like pretty tiny and still run something that's fairly robust on your machine. So I'm going to close this, like, that's kind of the nice looking version of Olama. If you're wanting to do something like use RAG, which is a process of actually putting a data set and forcing your model to reference that in order to turn back answers, then you'll use just a pretty simple system with Open Web UI. And Open Web UI, you can see right here at the top, it says localhost 8080. And that means that this whole thing is just going to be querying things on my own machine. Um, there's some specific ways that I can show you that it's only going to be referencing itself when we are going through this process, but using Open Web UI means I don't have to use Terminal over here, which is a little bit harder as far as like visuals to interact with. Um, but using Open Web UI means that I can select the model that I want to use. I can put queries in just like I could with the nice polished UI is user interface UI of Olama. Um, but I also can do things like attach knowledge, which is where we go and use these data sets and actually push the model to give us answers that are more specific. And I'm trusting that Andrew's going to speak up if there's questions that I need to answer in the moment here. If not, I'm going to keep running through. I have to kind of reference my little notes that guide me through this process so that I don't miss anything.
You're good.
So,
You're good to go, Zam, and it'll be
okay,
Lydia hopping in there if anything comes up.
okay, perfect.
No worries.
So Olama, again, is an open source tool. One of the things that I default to is using open source tools versus ones that are paid models. And that's usually because there's more control involved in it. And it's free. Open source models are a big opportunity for these different groups that are monetarily restrained as far as like we don't have all the cash flow in the world. A lot of us have been working in communities that it's very clear that like we're not flush and ready to just dole out our money back to these giant corporations. Open source models give us control over how we're setting things up. We don't have to necessarily send money back out to these mega corporations, and we can keep more things internal as far as like how you adjust the whole setup. So again, Olama, open source. I'm running this Mistral 7B. It's a European model developed in France, and I'm running it on a MacBook Air with 24 gigs of RAM, but that's larger than I actually need to run this model. I could add probably 15 models onto my machine of different sizes and still be able to run them. And when I'm talking about models, like ChatGPT has several models that they run. You usually can select through like which one you actually want to use when you're putting in your different queries into AI. And same with Claude, there's several versions of that one. So when I say I have the option to download a lot of different models, it means that I could hop onto Olama and download any number of different models, or use another program and download a model. And they're different sizes and parameters that generally can be used on, as I said, any number of machines. Um, okay, let's see.
Sam, just a quick question from the chat. Is
Yeah.
the model made by Web UI? So the model is made by Web UI, and then it would add knowledge to feed the model info. Is that correct?
Not quite. So Open Web UI is just like a faceplate. Kind of have to think of it as like a mask. So instead of working over here in Terminal, where I would just open up a window and type in to prompt my model that I've downloaded, I've used this equivalent of a faceplate with Open Web UI. So this is just like something to make it look nice. That's it. And it's also allowing me to go and query the specific data set that I have downloaded. So I'm going to show you now what that means as far as like when I'm using the model just on my machine that's not querying the data set that I have, and then when I add in the data set that I've downloaded. Okay, so the first uh, query that I'm going to run, and this is just to show you what it looks like when you have specific things added in. We're going to go here to this nice localhost 880. This is again just entirely on my machine. Even though I am on a browser, it is not using internet. And I'm just going to ask who created this demo. Sorry. And then I'm going to add knowledge here. So I've got all those NCAI resolutions, and that's what it's going to use to reference to give me an answer. Okay, so it is coming up with a lot of things just to say that there's nothing in here. All right, all of these are resolutions that are in that data set. It just basically said at the beginning, I don't know why it's added all these specific resolutions. Kind of funny that it did that, but it basically says the source does not provide information on who created this demo specifically. So now we're going to add a new set of knowledge onto here and ask the same question. So we've got the NCAI knowledge already on there. And now we're going to add in demo info and make sure that the NCAI resolutions are in there just for reference. So the demo info is just a single document that I've added that has information about me. And you'll see what it turns back now.
Okay, Zam, another question from the chat. Could you easily create a RAM from a Zotero archive? Could that be replicated in that capacity?
You can create data sets from anything. If you have your own private data sets, so one of the projects that I have on the side for myself is using an AI model to, sorry, this is taking a second for this. It queries a lot of different documents. So it's like even, uh, there we go. But you can create it out of any data set. So one of the things I'm going to do is I have complex health conditions and I have a number of different disabilities that I'm working through, and I have trouble keeping track of all the things and trying to figure out if something is relevant when I'm going to go see a new doctor or specialist. So this is a very specific and personal example, but I'm going to take all of my health data and put it into a file. This is what I was starting to do. And if you were at my last webinar, this is the thing that I confessed to as I was doing this like on a public open model. And then I stopped because it was very clear that none of the data was private. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just dumped all of my medical documentation into the equivalent of like this public folder out there. But I'm going to have all these documents that I do have them on my computer in a file. And then you can go and download a model and then have it query just your own documents. So I can be like, pull all of my uh, blood results for this particular thing, and it can go and query the specific things that I have and then bring them back out again. I don't know exactly the example that was brought up in the chat. I can't see the chat at the moment just because it's I have everything minimized, but you can take literally any data set. And as long as your computer or server that you're using is large enough to hold that data set, then you can have your local model query that. And you could imagine that like in a tribal government setting, this could be if you have everything hosted on internal servers, then your government team could have an enterprise setup of something like this where you can query all of the resolutions that you have for your tribal government. If you've got a digitized archives, then that can be things that are all part of your local AI that you use. Your tribal laws, any court decisions from your tribal courts, all of those things could be hosted internally in this bubble that you create. And you could use an interface like this to then go and force it to give you a very specific answer back. So now that it's referenced in our query here, now that it's referenced the document that I added in or the knowledge that I added in about this demo, it says that I created the demo and that this document has other information about me. I just had like a little bio thrown in there. And so every time you do uh, a query like this, if you're adding in your the knowledge as it calls it in this particular interface, that is doing RAG. That's using RAG. So as I said, it can be literally anything. Is there a follow-up on that question, or does that cover it?
I think, okay, there's kind of two follow-up questions. They're asking if you can connect a RAM into a cloud database, like say a Google Drive. That's one, question A. And then B, does this knowledge that you add get saved somewhere?
So all of it is locally saved. If you connected something like this, like your offline model, to something like Google Drive, it is possible, but you're then sending it through the internet to get that and retrieve it. So I think that in my opinion, the best option would be to save documents locally or switch to a non-Google cloud option, which isn't necessarily everyone's go-to. Um, but as of right now, you can have Claude go and pull everything from Google. Same with ChatGPT. You can put in these connectors and have it query those. But the big problem is that that main model is still connected to the internet. And so all of that, whatever you're querying with that, and if they're going and pulling things out of Google Drive, it is not private any longer. So in this case, you could set this up to go and pull something from Google Drive, but it does again require an internet connection. Uh, so it's just kind of if you can download it onto the specific machine you're using, or if it's within a networked server, when you're at a tribal government, most IT departments, or even in an academic setting, most IT departments have created a local network of servers. There's typically like a bank of them that have the tribes data on there. And then when you're on site in a government building, then you can access the data that's stored on there. That's usually where all the tribes files are kept, unless they're using a completely cloud-based option. And in that setting, your IT department could set up local AI that would be able to query all of the documentation that's kept on site. So it just gets a little more complicated if you're trying to use a cloud-based uh, service like Google Documents or Google Drive. Okay, so we're going to do a couple more queries in here, things that are more specific to the NCAI resolutions. That's National Congress of American Indians. Uh, so let's see. Just pulling up my list of queries here. And just as a reference point, RAG is retrieval augmented generation. So it's just when you're going and putting a query in, you're kind of forcing it to go over and look at these other documents before it gets back to you. You're keeping it from guessing based off of its training data, which is sometimes just kind of more generic. and you're actually making it give you a specific answer. Okay. We're going to go ahead and put in this next query here. And again, attaching the knowledge. There's some parts of this that are kind of annoying to like have to keep forcing it to go back to the data set that we want. But at the end of the day, you end up with more specific information as the turnback. And so if any of you are following along on your own machines, you could go and put your own identical query into ChatGPT, and it's going to turn back a pretty robust response as far as what positions NCAI has taken on data privacy or federal surveillance. So the point isn't necessarily that your private model is going to be better or more robust or more verbose, say more things than ChatGPT or Claude or another online model. It's that you can control what data it's going to go and look at, and you can control what's being shared with these models outside. Okay, so we've got an answer here. It says, I don't see any information about formal positions taken by tribal nations on data privacy or federal surveillance, specifically within this provided context, and that being the actual NCAI resolutions. Um, okay. Let's see. Let's try that one more time and see if we can get a better response.
As the response comes back, we do have another question in the chat.
Okay, go ahead and ask it, and
Since
we'll
we
try
do a
this.
lot of work on
This
like
one is,
fungi.
does a llama contribute to an external language model slash pool if it has access to the internet?
No. One of the things that I can show in a moment here is how it's referencing itself. That's why I have Activity Monitor pulled up here. Is that we are looking at network and it's showing that there's like send and receive. That's all internal communication that's happening with Olama. It's not using the internet once you've downloaded the model. It's just querying the computer itself. If I wasn't on a webinar right now, the easiest way to show this would be for me to just shut off my internet. But then I would disconnect from being able to actually show you my screen, and I'd have to re-log in. So it was a complication that I was like, this is going to be challenging to show people. Okay, here we go. Another one where it's like, wow, this is not that great. And that's just how it is sometimes when you're working with these private models. You're not going to necessarily, as I said, going to have the best responses on here, but it will be more specific. Okay. So the corpus that it's referencing is 429 NCII resolutions. And it's the kind of thing that is not showing up in AI training data. I went and queried multiple different models on this particular thing, and the only thing they could do is go and reference things that had were active on the internet right now, but they did not have it in their knowledge without going and making that outside query. So the benefit of this, again, in this particular situation is like if you have really specific documents that you want to show um, and go through in your processes when you're trying to understand something, then you can type in specific queries and have it go to a specific documentation source or multiple documentation sources that you've actually given it and specifically uploaded on your machine. And it'll go from those hard documents and not just a web crawl. Okay.
Hey, Zam, can we just address a quick question in the chat?
hmm
So there is a question that says, when we use the add knowledge feature, are there advantages to having more rigorously defined semantic information as opposed to big, messy collection of unstructured text documents? They mean semantic data like in RDF triplets or docs conforming to well-defined JSON or XML schemas.
Yeah, so your AI model can go and query any version of a document, and it's not difficult for it to do that. One of the things that I did when I was prepping for this, I had a different web interface that I was using. So Open Web UI is again one option. There's a few different options for how you can like put a faceplate on the models that you're working with. But uh, I had the documents that I put together, and this is not using it right now because that would have, I was using LM Studio, which is a different faceplate that you can use, but you can chunk documents ahead of time. And so your data sets can be on the clean end of things to like completely messy and like all PDFs. JSON documents are helpful. Markdown is helpful as far as speed is concerned. But ultimately, if you want to make it faster, chunking documentation and data sets, it's where you're basically running another program where you go through the entire data set and actually put together things that are like terms and like concepts. So I'm going to show you just in my documentation one of the things that I did for this demo. And again, it's not using it right now, but ChromaDB is where I took all of these resolutions that are in here, and these are all TXT files. It's just like the simplest form of what some people would call a Word document. It's like no formatting in there. Um, and I had to work through this data set several times. I had a command that scraped it from the internet and like downloaded every single one of these documents. And then I had to go back and retroactively add in the resolution uh, titles and names because those weren't in every one of the documents that were on the NCII website. That's like they're named like KUN-808-299 based off of whatever particular place and date and order the resolution was passed. Um, and I had to like continue to work with this data set to make it cleaner and easier to work through. Um,
So, Zam, how do you know how much effort to put into cleaning or improving the documents and info that make up the corpus? Because it sounds like there's a lot of process of chunking. And how do you know when you're done or when it's enough, how much of it's a good data set?
I think part of it is looking at how well your model is performing. There's also different models are better at different things. So Mistral is like, it's kind of, it's more of a general purpose model. There's other models that are better at like creative outputs, and creative outputs depend on hallucinations. So, you may, if you're the type of person who's using your models for creative writing or art outputs or something like that, or some sort of creative application, uh, then you may want to spend some time looking at which model you're working with and then start testing also. Like, so in this interface, if I had multiple models downloaded, then I could switch between these two. Or I do have a couple of them downloaded. It's just like I'm not sure how well they'll perform. We can try it out. But you can select a different model that's better for what you're working on in particular, and then test run it through. And the other thing that is very real about this is that the way to get the best and easiest guidance on doing this for your own application is to use AI that is connected to the internet to guide you through setting it up on your own machine. Uh, you can watch tutorials on how to do this stuff and get, again, what is that snapshot in that moment of what's the best option and path to do it for that particular machine. But if you want it to be hyper specific to you and what you're attempting to do, then use a public AI model. Although I will say not Grok. Like there are ones that are like most likely to steal everything from you, and others that are just kind of your standard model. There is a link on the website that I mocked up just for this reference. And I don't know if Andrew, you can pull that one in there. It's just the exam builds web link. But on there, there's a like a safer AI component that you can go look at, and it has a breakdown of like how the models are performing right now and the degrees of safety of the different ones. But regardless, you can go and use ChatGPT or Claude and literally have them walk you through how to do exactly what you're going to do. So as far as like how to make sure your data set is totally ready to go and when to stop working on it when you're feeling satisfied with the responses that are coming back. And obviously, like what I'm showing you here is like this is not the greatest demonstration of what the capabilities are. The point of this primarily is to show you that it can do this, not that it's like this is the best and brightest uh, tool that you can use out there. Um,
Dan, we had a question. Is there any tribes or native organizations who are using local AI like this that anyone knows of or that you've worked with?
Yeah, so there's a couple of groups that are in the process of setting it up right now. I would say that for the most part, what I've seen is tribes who are using commercial products that are guardrailed over completely local AI models. I do expect that there's going to be more commercial products available in like the coming months, honestly. That people can opt into. I don't know if anyone is using Microsoft in the US has like some very specific tribal options. And again, I'm not encouraging people to use one product over another. It's everything has risks and nothing is perfect. But for the most part, I'm seeing people use Microsoft's Tribal Cloud, which is just the only one that's guaranteed to be US based or like on US soil, which has its own complexities for sovereignty. So I won't get into that. But the Tribal Cloud option with Microsoft and then using integrated Copilot as their method for keeping that more secure. And I do think that that's generally a better option than, again, just going and using a public model. They're going from riskiest to least risky. The riskiest option is a public model that you have not logged into, and that you're just using like without having paid for it, the free version of public models. The next tier of safer is using the online models where you actually are paying for it, and therefore your data is typically more guaranteed to be localized. And then the next one down would be like a locked down guardrailed option like Copilot that your enterprise is actually um, physically making adjustments to. It's not just like every Copilot, it is like one that is being managed by an IT department. And then the next down is like a locally run AI model. And it's going to be more guaranteed to be safe if you're like the most secure would be a machine where you download the model onto it and you run it while it's actually unplugged from the internet. Like you shut off a any Wi-Fi or anything like that. I don't think that that's necessary for every person. But if you're going on degrees of security, that's where it would fall. Is like most secure would be a completely offline one where you have shut off the internet. Okay. So let's do a different query on this. I cannot find my initial queries, so if anyone's got any good ones that I could throw into this to ask the NCAI reference documents, that would be helpful right about now. And gosh,
Someone
there's
pop it in the chat. Let's go. What's your question for the NCAI database? Okay, we got the first one. What is tribal data sovereignty?
okay. Mm, and then we will add knowledge. Let's see. Yeah, pretty interesting. I'm just kind of catching up here on some of the chat. Uh, all right, let's see what this comes by. I like this next question on here. And I'm also interested in like Rosebud Sue. Very interested in what you're doing. This is the kind of thing where I think working on collective solutions is a really good strategy for Indian country right now. Like part of the thing that I've done in this collection of resources for this little website that I built is just trying to bring up examples of what other communities are doing. Gosh, this is like falling completely flat. Uh, you guys just have to know that like th these things can get better or worse. I do think that like the data being chunked ahead of time and cleaner is helpful. Okay, it's coming. All right. Well, it came back with some things. It's being really accurate right now. So that's one of the other things that is true about this is that there's like significantly less hallucinations on a local AI model than than you would see in like a ChatGPT or Claude that's connected to the internet. You can use both of those models, by the way, offline. You can download them and Llama as well. For anything that is open source as well, you can download those models and see uh, like what it looks like comparatively when it has the internet and when it doesn't. But a lot of what it does is just kind of like fill in the blanks. And it's important to understand how AI works too. Most of it is like uh, these, it's machine learning. So it's taking and basically picking the what is most likely based off of everything I've taken in before. And so it's like pattern recognition and then pattern replication. It's just very robust compared to what we've seen in the past. Okay, this is a little bit weird at the end. Let's add in the next one. hmm Yeah, I can make sure that there is a link for chunking data sets, like prepping the data sets and then working on the chunking process um, for some of the materials to go out afterwards.
Yeah.
Or Andrew, you could write it.
Oh, Jacqueline's called me out already. So, no, I was thinking of along the lines of using when you mentioned using AI to help AI build your AI models.
Hmm.
So I was thinking like, well, the chunking process seems to be coming up and kind of relevant in this situation here, where it might ease a little bit of the issues with the what the responses or outputs are coming with.
Yeah. Yep. So I think we'll go ahead and shut this one down for now and let this sad process end as far as like the performance of this. It's interesting because it you never know what it's going to turn back with, and it's not going to be the same answer every time. It's like it's part of the thing about artificial intelligence is that there is not consistency. You're not going to like see the same exact answer pop back out again. So in my tests of this, it was coming back with specific resolutions for some of the questions I was asking. And then in this version, it is not. So it's hard to tell sometimes what it's going to do. But you can make it better. One of the other things that you'll see as time goes on is that there is going to be development on how good private models end up looking. One of the big things is going to be memory. Memory is one of the things that like took a while to come out from these open public models. But when memory happened and people were using these paid versions, they could have like a huge, long set of information or ongoing discussions with AI and turn back much better results. And that kind of thing is going to come up again as far as these local AIs are concerned. And there are versions of it and ways that you can set it up where memory is included. So you'll see those in the links for the notes that go out afterwards. But there are versions of that you can use today. I haven't seen a version that includes both RAG and memory. So those two things together, when they're all in the same thing, will be much more robust. And I'll stop now. I should have been paying attention to the time. So
Clearly, we had so much great discussions. Thanks, Sam. And thank you, everyone, for such an active chat participation.
Yeah, definitely. Lydia, thank you for on the fly negotiating the chat with Zam so that we could have some live action there and learning. So, Chanan, and thank you to Zam for coming back. Another great webinar. I encourage you all earlier. I dropped in the chat the link to Zam's previous webinar, which gives a good primer on AI for tribal communities and a little bit more background about where Zam comes from in this field. And then big thank you to Lydia for jumping in today for Jane Anderson, who had to step back. Um, and as always, thank you to our behind the scenes folks and to everyone for attending. Next week, again, we welcome you to join the Local Context TC and BC Labels, Tools to Support Indigenous Cultural Authority and IDSov webinar, as well as our webinar on sovereign data storage tech options, which is the Akwesasne Mohawk story. Finally, we invite you to join the U.S. Indigenous Data Sovereignty Network's 2026 IDSov Summit, which will be here in person in Tucson, April 15th through 17th, or you can join the 15th and 16th virtually. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you soon.